In this video, we're going to answer the question, what is encryption? This video is brought to you by the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Center out of Whatcom Community College. The creation of this video was funded by a National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education grant. My name is Philip Kreger. I'm an Associate Professor of Cybersecurity at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. Note that this is a very broad overview of encryption for viewers who know absolutely nothing about cybersecurity or encryption or math. Another thing that's left out of this video is the math that's involved with encryption. Modern encryption algorithms require highly complex math, which will not be shown here in this video. So let's ask the question, what is encryption? Well, encryption, very simply, is a process that scrambles readable text so that it can only be read by somebody who has a secret key. And this is what it looks like. This is called encrypted text or ciphertext, and I'll explain how we get ciphertext or encrypted text shortly. But first, let's ask the question, why is encryption useful? Encryption is useful because it protects sensitive information from being read by unauthorized persons. So what is sensitive information? Information is sensitive based upon its contents or its use. For example, for single individuals, we might think of health data, or credit card information, or banking account information. For a political party, it could be their strategy for winning election. For a company, it could be intellectual property or trade secrets. Or for the military, it could be war plans. All of these types of information can be protected through encryption. So another question is who uses encryption? And this is a very simple answer because pretty much anybody who uses the web uses encryption, whether they know it or not. It's all done automatically in the process of connecting to a web server. And let's take a look at what that looks like. So this is the address bar for me visiting Amazon.com. And you notice that the lock icon in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. That means that that connection is secure, and that connection is protected by encryption. I didn't have to do anything. The entire process is set up automatically through public-private key encryption, which I'll talk about shortly. And then if I go to Bank of America, this is using a different browser, but notice that it says the connection is secure, and there you see the lock icon in the upper left-hand corner. This again is a website that provides for encryption between the user that's connected to the web server. I didn't have to do anything special. The next time you go out to a website, see if you can identify that lock icon when you're connecting to the website. That guarantees that the connection is secure. There are two primary types of modern encryption. There's symmetric encryption, and then there's something called asymmetric encryption. So symmetric encryption is also called secret key or single key encryption. And that's because it uses a single key for both encrypting data, that is scrambling it, and decrypting data, that is descrambling it so that the data can be read. So let's walk through an example. We have persons A and B, and A wants to send a sensitive document to B. So the process of symmetric encryption works like this. So the first thing is that A needs to encrypt the document. And this doesn't have to be something done overtly. A lot of times this is done automatically through the application that is sending the document. And so there's a single key that is involved in encrypting the document. And so for encryption to work, you need an encryption algorithm, and that's just a special type of math. And then you need a key, and then that document is processed through the encryption algorithm using the key to scramble it. Once B receives that document, they need to go through the process of decrypting the document. And again, this doesn't need to be something that's overtly done by B. A lot of times this is done by the application automatically that's being used to send and receive the document. But in order to decrypt the document, B or the application that he or she is using needs to understand what form of encryption was used, that is the algorithm and math behind the encryption process, but also they need to have the exact same key. And then that document is processed through the algorithm using the key, and that results in the decrypted document. And now B can read the contents of the document. So let's walk through a quick example. These are some fake credit card numbers and credit card information, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the process of how I can use an application to encrypt this information. And so I'm using a program called GPG, and I'm telling GPG to use a symmetric encryption to encrypt that document. So then I'm asked to input a passphrase. So in this instance, the symmetric key that is going to be used is going to be a simple passphrase. And so I enter my passphrase twice, I click OK, and there's the encrypted text. And again, another name for encrypted text is ciphertext. And then the process of decrypting works just in the reverse. So here again, I'm using the same program, something called GPG. The -D says decrypt this. I hit enter, I'm asked for my passphrase, and that results in what you see on the screen. And the first two lines are just telling me the type of encryption algorithm that was used to encrypt the text, and also the fact that it was encrypted with one passphrase, which means symmetric encryption was used. And what you see below that is the decrypted text, which is exactly the same as the original text. Now here's a problem with symmetric encryption, and it's something that you might see in any organization. Someone wants to send an encrypted document to a lot of people. It could be 5 or 10, 50, 100, or even thousands of people. So there's a potential problem here. Every person receiving the encrypted document must possess that exact same key. Now I want you to think about that. How do you transfer that key to the recipients? If it's one person, do you call them? Do you send it through email? Well, you're not going to send it through email because somebody could intercept that. They could also intercept a phone call. So what if an unauthorized person obtains that key? Well, if they do, that means that that unauthorized person can read that sensitive data. And it gets even worse if you must send the document to hundreds or thousands of people. What would happen? How would you do that? So the bottom line is, how would you get that key from the original person who encrypted the document to the thousands of other people who need to decrypt and read the contents of the document? That seems to be a problem. Scientists and researchers created something that eliminates that issue, and that's called asymmetric encryption, and it's also called public-private key encryption. Let's see how that works. So asymmetric encryption, unlike symmetric, uses two keys that are mathematically related. However, knowledge of one key provides absolutely no information about the contents of the other key, and this is crucial. So one key is used to encrypt, and the other key is used to decrypt. Notice that requires both keys. You can't encrypt and decrypt with the same key. You have to use one to encrypt and the other to decrypt. So one key is designated a public key. The other key is designated a private key. And so the public key, as the name indicates, is going to be shared with everybody. It really doesn't matter because knowing the public key doesn't provide you any information about what the private key's contents are. However, the private key, just like the secret key used in asymmetric, has to be kept private. And in fact, just to show you that public keys should be public, here is my public key. Now, knowing the contents of that tells you absolutely nothing about what the contents of my private key are. And in fact, if you want to look up my public key, you can go out on the web to something called a key server. And this is the key server maintained by the openpgp.org Foundation. And you notice you could search by my email there, philip@kreger.net. That's my private email. And there you can download my public key, and then you would store that on your computer. Now let's see how asymmetric encryption works. So we have a document that we want to encrypt with public-private key encryption. And so to encrypt that, I am going to use my private key, and then I'm going to send that document, once it's encrypted, to 1, 5, 10, 50, 1,000 different people, where then they will have to decrypt that using my public key. And then they've gone to one of these websites, one of the key servers, they've downloaded my public key. Once they obtain that, they're able to decrypt that encrypted document that was encrypted with my private key. So in this sense, public-private key encryption provides two things. One is confidentiality, is that only people that have received the document and have my public key can decrypt it, but also provides one more thing. It provides authentication. What do I mean by authentication? If somebody downloads and uses my public key to decrypt a document that I sent them, that means that my private key had to have been used to encrypt that document, which means that it authenticates that Philip sent the document and it was encrypted with my private key. Let's look at a different example. Laura wants to send me a sensitive document. Well, she's going to encrypt the document with the key. Now, what key is she going to use? Well, she's gone out to one of the key servers and downloaded my public key. She then uses that to encrypt the document, and then she sends that to me. Now, what does it require for me to decrypt that document that was encrypted with my public key? Well, it's going to require my private key. So I am the only one who has access to my private key, which means I am the only one who can decrypt the document. There's a lot of information on your computer. I have about 16 terabytes of information just in my home office, and I don't encrypt everything, but there's some things that I definitely want to encrypt. Let's take a look at an example of some folders you might have on your computer. You see there's a health documents, memes, recipes, Internal Revenue Service documents, and holiday photos. Is it necessary to encrypt all of these documents? Well, certainly. Health documents probably going to contain sensitive information. Internal Revenue Service documents, that folder probably contains sensitive information. Are memes sensitive? Well, they could be. It really depends upon the individual. How about recipes? Well, if it was a major company that had secret recipes, like the recipe for Coca-Cola, yes, you might want to encrypt that. But I'm not going to encrypt that. Or holiday photos, that you may or may not want to encrypt that. So it depends upon how sensitive the data is, whether you want to put forth the effort to encrypt the information within those folders. So let's look at this from a broader perspective. So information to encrypt, certainly important and sensitive documents. You could encrypt your entire documents folder, regardless of sensitivity. That's quite easy to do and really doesn't cause any issues. And finally, you could encrypt your entire hard drive, and that includes the operating system files. And that process is called whole disk or entire disk encryption. And that's usually not necessary for the common individual. A lot of companies will do this when they have sensitive information on their computers, or the military does this, but for you and me, private citizens, it's probably not necessary to have whole disk encryption. But certainly, at a minimum, you'd want to make sure that you encrypt your important and sensitive documents. If you think that physical security will always protect your laptop, this is what happened on January 6th when the Speaker of the House's laptop was stolen from her office, which you would think would have very good physical security. Now, I'm guessing that the Speaker's laptop had whole disk security plus a lot of other layers of security. So it's probably not an issue with her laptop, but you have to consider that if somebody has physical access to your laptop and your sensitive and important information is not encrypted, then they can probably read it. So in summary, what did we talk about? We defined what encryption is. We described how it's useful and who uses it. We discussed how it is used. We discussed two types of encryption, symmetric and asymmetric encryption. And we discussed what documents you should consider encrypting. This video is brought to you by the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Center out of Whatcom Community College. This video was funded by National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education Grant.